Yo mama's so fat that her ass needs its own zip code. I was obsessed with numbers as a kid. I liked the way that they helped us organize ideas and thoughts, helped us to sort of figure out how we could shape maps and understand how space worked, or understand gradations of learning and organizing people. And so I was really lucky in that my mom and my dad both worked full-time, overtime, to make sure that I got the best education possible and that I got to study as much math and as much numbers as possible. That's a great way of saying it. And I was also lucky because in addition to getting to go to this fancy school where I got to spend time with a fancy math tutor, I also got to go every day, since my mom and dad worked, of my childhood life to an after-school care program, and every day in the summer at the YWCA, Patty Johnson Wilson at 21st and Lewis. And what was so great about that place, the Patty Johnson Wilson YMCA, is that my after-school friends were friends from all of these other schools in the city of Tulsa, public schools, private schools. And I got to meet people who were incredibly different from me, who had incredibly different backgrounds and had lived in different zip codes than I lived in, and most of the people that I went to my fancy private school with. And so I probably learned more there about the world than I ever did from my fancy math tutors and in my fancy private school. And I also got to meet an incredible woman there named Dee. Dee was the coolest person that I have ever met. She was a camp counselor, and she was in charge of the preteens. So those of us who were slowly emerging into teenagerhood and feeling awkward in our bodies, Dee held us close and loved us and told us that we were beautiful even when everyone else in the world was telling us that we weren't. And she saw those of us that were othered and felt awkward, and she told us that we belonged. Dee trusted us, and we trusted her. We told her our darkest secrets. We talked about family, but we also talked about fun things like pop culture, and most importantly for me, music. I love music. I'm an incredibly musical person. I was a musical child, and I loved being able to talk to someone about my love for music. And one day I was talking with Dee, and I told her that I loved Whitney Houston. And Dee smirked, looked at me, and said, "Everyone loves Whitney Houston. Who else do you like?" And I said, "Well, I kind of like Debbie Gibson, and I kind of like the Pet Shop Boys." She smiled knowingly. And I kind of struggled, and I was like, I don't know. And she looked at me, and she was like, "Well, what about Salt-N-Pepa?" And I looked at her, and I was like, "Do you mean Salt-N-Pepper, the spice shaker things, at the diner?" And she was like, No. A band called Salt, S-A-L, and Pepa, P-E-P-A. She was like, "They're an amazing musical group. You should go check them out." And I trusted Dee. Dee trusted me. So I went home, and I called K-Hits 106.9. And I requested this band, Salt-N-Pepa, that you need to play this music. And they're like, "Whatever, kid." And I watched MTV hoping to eventually find, and then eventually the music video for Push It came on, and my mind was blown. It was some of the most amazing music and dance and performance that I had ever seen in my entire life. And I watched that video over and over again, and I started to memorize the dance moves, and I would like to perform them for you here tonight. But I'm gonna need a little bit of help. Can you sing along with me? Ooh, baby, baby, but baby, baby. I've still got it, or some of it. I was so in love with Salt-N-Pepa. And I was so excited to go tell Dee about my new love for Salt-N-Pepa. And I went back to the YWCA the next day, and I saw Dee talking conspiratorially with a bunch of other preteens. And she saw me and she goes, "Hey, Karl, yo mama's so fat, her ass needs its own zip code." I didn't know what a yo mama joke was. And I froze and my face fell. And she realized that I thought that she'd made fun of me. And I looked at her and she looked at me, and she probably would have pulled me close and said, "Oh, baby, that was just a joke." She would have told me about Richard Pryor and explained the whole yo mama structure. But at the exact same time, my mom pulled up to pick me up. And the camp director said, "Karl, your mom's here." And so I, crestfallen, had to walk to my car and sit into our family car where my mom, who is this incredible nurse, she has spent her life saving people from every zip code in this region. One of the most tenacious caregivers you have ever met. And she looked at me and I looked at her and I was like, "Oh my God, is her ass really that big?" And I started bawling. And my mom jumped up, and this was my moment of truth, but actually it was Dee's, because she jumped up and time stood still and she walked to the camp director and had this hushed conversation. And I saw Dee realize what was about to happen, and I didn't know what to do. I was so ashamed because during the time that I had explained what had happened to my mom, I'd started to realize it was just a joke and it was a cultural thing, and things were getting weird. Fortunately, the YWCA empowers women and eliminates racism. That's their motto. And so the camp director had talked everyone down, but things changed between me and Dee, and she wasn't able to trust me in the way that she had before. But I went to college later and I studied history and mathematics, and I had a professor find out that I was from Tulsa, and he was like, "Oh, you should read this new book by Hannibal Johnson." And he was like, "Can you believe that something like this happened in your town?" And I was like, "Of course I can." Misunderstandings 70 years prior to that small misunderstanding, of course, led to the destruction of a city. That's who we are, and we have to sit with that, and we have to live with that. And I wake up a lot in the middle of the night, or I hear Salt-N-Pepa, and I wonder where Dee is, and I wonder if, like me, she danced in the streets of Baltimore in 2008 after campaigning in Virginia and North Carolina, and I wonder if she marched in protests and said their names until her voice was hoarse too, and I wonder if she exploded into the streets of Brooklyn when we elected our first African-American vice president female. And I also wonder about how sad she probably is too. But the most important thing I wonder is if she would respect me if I said what I probably should have said when she said that joke to me so long ago, and responded with, "Well, Dee, yo mama's so fat, her ass needs 2 zip codes." Thank you.